There's a danger in the cold it's totally counterintuitive. There's a point where your body's most violent attempt to save itself just stops. And that silence, that's when things get really dangerous. Today, we're going to break down hypothermia and why what you might think is a sign of getting better is actually the exact opposite.
I mean, picture this. You're out in the cold, and the shivering starts. It's intense, right? Your whole body is fighting so hard, but then it just stops. So you feel this wave of relief, right? You think, phew, I'm finally warming up. But that quiet moment, it's not relief. It's actually a surrender.
Yep, it's called hyperthermia. And look, if there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this. The second that shivering stops, the real emergency has just begun. The body's fight is over.
So you're probably wondering, how does this even happen? Well, at its core, hypothermia is really just a simple, but, deadly math problem. Your body starts losing heat way faster than it can possibly make it.
Okay, so let's get a little clinical for a second. Hypothermia officially kicks in when your core temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius. That's 95 Fahrenheit. And we're not just talking about feeling chilly here. This is a full-on systemic failure. The power plant inside you just can't keep the lights on anymore.
Yeah, this number right here, this is the critical threshold. 35 Celsius, 95 Fahrenheit. Once you dip below this line, you're not just cold anymore. You are officially in a medical emergency. Every single dangerous symptom we're about to talk about gets triggered by crossing this line. So, where is all this heat going? You might be thinking it's, the wind or maybe wet clothes. And yeah, those definitely play a part. But get this, a whopping 60% of your body heat is lost just through simple radiation. That's literally you, just sitting in a cold room, beaming heat out into the air. The rest gets lost through things like conduction, convection, and evaporation.
All right, so your body's temperature dips below that 35-degree line. What's the very first thing it does? It sounds the alarm. And trust me, it's an alarm you can't ignore.
Now, we call this the mild stage, but don't let that fool you. Your body is on high alert. You get that intense shivering, that's your muscles just firing like crazy to generate heat. Your heart rate speeds up, your breathing gets faster, but take a closer look at those other symptoms. The confusion, the slurred speech. That's a huge clue. Even at this early stage, the cold is already messing with your brain.
So here's the crazy part. Shivering is actually a good thing. I know, it's miserable, but it means the body's defenses are still working. Think of it like your body's engine revving like crazy, trying desperately to generate warmth. The real problem starts when that engine just goes quiet.
So what happens when that engine finally runs out of gas? Well, that's when the fight ends and a much more dangerous, silent shutdown begins.
This slide really lays it all out. It's a complete 180. On one side, you've got the body fighting back, shivering, heart racing, blood pressure up. But on the other side, it's all about shutting down. No more shivering. The heart rate and blood pressure just plummet. Your body has flipped into a kind of extreme energy-saving mode, and it's sacrificing everything else just to protect the core organs.
And this is where things get truly life-threatening. The shivering is gone. Instead, you get drowsiness, breathing slows way down, muscles get stiff. That silence isn't a sign of peace. It's the sound of the body surrendering to the cold. It's amazing. Doctors can actually see this stress on a heart monitor. There's this unique little blip that shows up on the ECG. It's called an Osborne wave, and it's a dead giveaway for doctors that the heart itself is really struggling under the extreme cold.
Okay, so we've seen just how dangerous this can get. The big question is, how do we reverse it? Because make no mistake, taking the right actions and taking them quickly can absolutely save a life.
All right, first aid here is pretty straightforward, but it is absolutely crucial. First things first, get them somewhere warm and dry. Next, gently get them out of any wet clothing. Water is a total thief when it comes to body heat. Then cover them up with dry blankets, jackets, whatever you've got. And if they're conscious and can swallow, a warm, non-alcoholic drink can really help bring that core temperature up.
Now, once someone's in a hospital, the treatment really ramps up depending on how bad things are. For mild cases, just passive warming, like blankets in a warm room, is often enough. For moderate cases, they'll use active warming, like heating pads. But for severe cases, that's not enough. They have to warm the body from the inside out, using things like warm IV fluids or even warmed-up oxygen.
Of course, the absolute best treatment is just prevention, right? And that starts with knowing who's most at risk from this silent threat.
Yeah, this is one of those things where the risk isn't the same for everybody. Newborns and the elderly, for example, really struggle to regulate their body temperature. People who are malnourished don't have the fuel to create heat. And a big one is alcohol. It gives you that false sense of being warm, but what it's really doing is making you lose heat even faster.
So preventing this is actually pretty simple, but super effective. Wear layers, stay dry, and make sure your body has the fuel it needs. And this is so important for newborns. Keeping those delivery rooms warm, somewhere between 26 and 28 degrees Celsius, to stop a dangerous temperature drop from happening right after birth.
So this brings us right back to where we started. You see someone out in the cold, and they suddenly stop shivering. What does that mean? It doesn't mean they're getting better. It means their body has surrendered. It means the fight is over, and they need help, immediately. And just remembering that the most dangerous sound you can hear in the cold is silence, well, that could literally be the difference between life and death.